You gonna be in Savannah tomorrow morning?
Yeah.
This is 2000. We ready?
That's the reason I don't trust.
Ready for our workshop? Okay. We're going to call to order our workshop session for this evening. We have one topic on here, but then we may have other things we could discuss. Discussion of Code Enforcement Policy and Procedures Manual. And with that being called to order, I'll just turn it over to our county manager to direct our.
Sure. Actually, we've got, I believe, 3 items that we're just going to discuss. But the first one, which we had planned to discuss, was Greg Hood, our Chief Code Enforcement Officer, has created a Code Enforcement Policy and Procedure Manual, which he wanted to present to y'all and get feedback on, and he could make adjustments, what have you. But the other item we were going to talk about were we going to talk about sketch plan, Lee? I forget. Or is that till next one?
Yeah, just briefly is
Okay.
all. Chelsea's going to present just
Okay,
maybe
and
5
then
minutes.
Sketch
So.
plan, the last is conditional uses in industrial zones. And so, but we'll let Greg take it from here. He's going to go page by page for all 25 pages of it.
Now, do we have that document in front of us?
It is in the agenda packet for the workshop.
Okay.
Oh, I need to
Yeah,
go.
you'll have-
I didn't pull that up. Go ahead, we won't waste time if you want to. Let me pull, see if give us a second for those who
Okay.
have our computers. We'll see if we can't pull it up right quick.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan.
Let's see. So I've only got the regular agenda pulled up right now.
Is that under special call meetings? I can't remember.
No,
It's
under
not,
work
okay.
session.
Okay.
I don't see a work session document. I'm missing it. How do I find it? Is it in our app?
You'll be able to go to MuniCode as you would your regular meeting item,
It's number 10.
and you're gonna select work session.
Yep, there'll be
in
one right
regular
there.
meetings. I see,
Should be a 4 PM.
for some reason I'm not seeing that.
Oh, we gotta select it, I see what you're saying.
Well, y'all are better than me. I need help.
We got to, let me make sure.
Oh, I didn't have work session checked. I got you.
Where's the work session at?
Yep, it's not checked. That's,
Mine was not even there.
all right, now to come
Special
up.
Now you
call and
should-
regular.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is.
Search
I got it.
that and-
Yeah, it should be down here now.
There we go.
Did you mash search?
There it is right there. Yep, yep.
We usually don't have that much stuff, so. I never even thought to look. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. I've got it. You
All
may
right.
proceed, Mr. Hood. Thank
All
you so
right,
much for
thank
your
you, sir.
patience.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Greg Hood. I'm Senior Code Enforcement Officer for the county. And I'm here to present to you our, or what I would like to be our operating policy and procedure manual. Manual's going to provide organization and standards for daily operations and procedures. It will emphasize conformity for officers and where all investigations are conducted in a similar manner. It'll set precedent for officers and serve as a field guide for investigative procedures. And it establishes a policy standard to protect the county from liability and legal action. It is 24 pages. And this is basically a detailed model of procedurally how we operate on a day-to-day basis. Might be kind of informative to most of you. I know a lot of people don't realize what code enforcement does, but this actually takes it from a philosophy all the way to the conclusion of cases.
So we didn't have an SOP on this before, I guess. This is the first time we've had an operating procedure?
No, sir, we've never had a manual or procedure for policies. With the department's growth, we're now technically at 5 officers.
Yeah,
So we
this
do
is
need to
great.
set some precedent and some policy.
Yeah, it's good.
And with that, I mean, I realize that you're probably reviewing it for the first time, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So this will,
The one question I had, to file a complaint or whatever,
sir.
currently, somebody calls me, I'll shoot Stephanie or somebody an email, Steve, and then I guess you guys handle it. With this, there's an actual form to fill out.
Well, if you read F,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah, see, I just scanned it, so I don't
Yeah,
know. I wanna make
yeah.
sure.
Yes, there's actually several ways that we receive complaints, and that is one, through you guys, any of your constituents that make a complaint. It does filter down to us, and you can also do an online complaint through OpenGov, and we take phone calls. So there's multiple ways that we do it.
would this run through that position as well that we talked about having, so it's filtered to one person who makes sure that's followed up on?
Yeah, like
If it's
411.
if it's a sanitation, because our sanitation coordinator still retains his authority as a code enforcement officer under Greg, right? Because there's code enforcement violations effective, related to the sanitation ordinance. So that would happen, but what we're working on, actually, we just had a demonstration of one earlier this week, yesterday, is the code enforcement and complaint, whether it's public works, code enforcement, sanitation, water, sewer, even law enforcement, non-emergency, we can forward out, but kind of a 311 system. So it creates a ticketing system so that you can either do it on your phone, online, If it's done in the form, it'll just be manually typed by the officers into the system so we can track. So not just we can track the status of a complaint, but the actual complainant can actually check the status of the complaint.
If they provide their.
If they provide their
They can do it
information.
anonymously, but they
Right.
won't be privy to having follow-up,
That's right.
you know.
Yes, we will take an anonymous complaint. We do prefer that we have a name and contact number. I believe we've set our policy with, as far as open records, that we're not gonna release complainant information.
While the investigation is ongoing.
So, but yes, we will investigate anonymous complaints as well.
So to make sure I understand, I'm clear, every complaint that is made, whether it's Public Works, code enforcement, whatever, will come through one
The-
department, person, or whatever, so that it's independent, the tracking that this complaint is being timely and properly addressed.
And that's through one system, that's the goal. Now, it might be tied in, like if it's a Public Works request, it comes in through our system, it might get forwarded to EOM, who has their own system, but they would be responsible for telling us when the issue is closed out. But that's the ultimate goal. Right now, it's fragmented, right? You go on the, if it was 3 weeks ago, you would go on the county site, there'd be a link for Atlantic Waste. You would call them.
Right.
There'd be a link for EOM. You would call them, but we would never know what the calls were, so we can never check on the status of them. So this puts, whether it's code enforcement or any of those other issues, through one system, so a single ticketing system, so we can track it.
And this is more for tracking external concerns and complaints, like from constituents and other agencies and so forth. For internally, we're just gonna kind of, like if I have something for you, I tell you, and you work on it, handle it with staff, whatever. This is just a way to track when our constituents, I'm guessing, call in and they will have a complaint.
If you send it to me, I may manually type in it in the system, because if a constituent calls you and complains about something,
Yeah, that would, for sure.
right, we're gonna, and then, you call them like, hey, whatever happened with that, and I'm out of work,
got
Marie or whoever can just log on and see it.
If it originates from constituent, even in the staff basis, we'll start a form or something to
That's
get
right.
on that tracking system. I like that. So this might eventually, when we have that set up, that's where we want to go. It might have to be tweaked to make that
That's right.
as a text amendment to make sure we add that that's the first step.
That's correct. That'll be integrated into his policies and procedures.
Yes, so that would probably fall under the electronic complaint, probably, so we could just add that as, OpenGov is the system that we're using now. We could just add 311 as well to that.
Okay.
But it's pretty in-depth. I realize you can't read it all now, but if you take some time to look at it, I assure you, if you read this, you'll know exactly what we do and the procedures we use.
Lee, is this something you've already looked at as well?
I haven't. I mean, I will. But Mr. Hill was going to present tonight in case y'all had any comments or wanted any revisions made, and then I can get a review once we have
So this
that.
won't come up for a vote tonight. This is just
No.
discussing, so you'll look at it, we can read it, and maybe at our next meeting. Okay, sounds good.
We'll ultimately adopt them, I guess, as
Right. But we're not doing it tonight. We're gonna have a chance to look a little further and let Lee look at it as well with our comments.
But if you have any questions for me about it, you can certainly email me or through Mr. Callahan.
Appreciate your work on this. This is good. We need more SOPs for all our departments and how we.
Yes, sir.
We'll continue to move that direction.
Thank you as well. I've seen the department develop a lot in the last couple of years and get some staffed up and take action quickly, so I certainly appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It really has. It's, when I started, it was one, and,
Hard to handle everything that we have.
yeah, it's quite a bit, but yes, it's blooming, and it's a good thing. It's a good thing. We can tackle more, and it does a lot of good. So, I thank you all, though.
I would say with recent DRT, it's kind of underscored it for me, you know, the not shortcomings of your staff, but just of communication
Yeah.
to the public on how, you know, so I think this is a huge step.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Thank you, Mr. Hood, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tim, you got a couple of items you want to cover with us?
What's that?
You got some other items you want to cover?
Yeah, I'll let Chelsea just briefly describe the site plan, and then I'll take over the conditional uses.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So, just so you gentlemen are aware, a site plan ordinance will be coming your way, most likely on the next agenda, so the April 2nd meeting. This will be for non-residential development. So right now you see sketch plans that come before you. So this will no longer be called sketch plan. It'll be called a site plan. But it is still that. It is still that sketch plan. But it is for non-residential development. We've worked with the county attorney and then planning and zoning staff. So you'll be seeing that. I'll send that ordinance out to you so you can review it. And so comments, concerns, please send them to Lee, myself, to Steve, the Director of Development Services, as you read through that, and so that we can get your feedback, and then we'll bring that forward April 2nd.
So as of now, the residential will still be considered sketch plan for the
So-
time being anyway?
So right now, we haven't, we're working through residential, through the subdivision ordinance. So you'll see that when we bring that ordinance through. But this will just be non-residential,
Gotcha.
so commercial, industrial. So
Gotcha.
So nothing's changing on the residential.
not at the moment.
So, you know, we never made it a requirement to have a sketch plan,
For commercial.
you know, where, you know, and to go through the sketch plan approval on commercial or industrial. Most of the times they're large enough, so they're going to give it to us, but there's every once in a while where somebody wants to rezone something without a site plan for speculative purposes, and, you know, we need to get an idea of what they're doing with regards to stuff like buffers and encroachments and drainage, wetlands, and that sort of thing. And since it is commercial, you know, we've had a, you know, we're trying to get away with, or trying to get away from the drawing something out with a pencil on the back of a cocktail napkin and submitting it to development services as a sketch plan. And since it is commercial, it's going to be subject to those, you know, basically higher standards for building and construction and fire. So we're requesting that they are designed plans, either an engineer or design professional.
Okay. All right, any questions or discussion from the board, or we'll move on to the conditional
Not until we
uses?
see the draft, which is coming, so.
You have an extra copy of that thing. I can't find it on mine.
Yes, I do.
You want to talk to us about conditional uses?
Oh, there it is, yeah. So, and this was brought up at the last meeting and really was brought up with regards to the situation with DRT, but it also needs to be discussed on other industrial uses. And so if you'll see that you've got a list, what is currently approved as industrial uses under the current code, and then there are right now 2 conditional uses that we've put in since 2020. One of them being the junk cars, you know, for export business, and then the other being container storage yards. The thought being that, you know, I wanted you to see the list, and really determine, are there things that, A, are on this list on heavy industrial, but that if you think of every industrial site in this county that you think, might be inappropriate for that particular site or something to that effect, there's an external condition, general proximity to heavy residential areas, that you think that particular use we may have to look at for a conditional use, chemical manufacturing, that sort of thing, asphalt plants or something to that effect, that we would start expanding the list of conditional uses. And obviously the reason for that is two reasons. One, if you've got an existing industrial property that's not being used, that's, or currently be used by some other use, and they change that use into something they want to change that use into something that's a conditional use, then it has to come back in front of the board for approval. And so, and then at that point, the board can take the considerations which are part of the conditional use zoning ordinance that we have, and there's kind of a list of considerations that you all can take under advisement to determine whether or not you want to approve that use, that conditional use for that particular property, or B, if you do approve it, what additional conditions you would like to see addressed to make it appropriate for that site. Or quite frankly, your C option is, that particular industrial site is not suitable for that conditional industrial use, and then you can deny it. So it gives the board a little bit more say on these high-intensity uses that could be, somewhat detrimental to the surrounding areas. So we would be looking at options for expanding the list beyond the two, and then kind of coming up with the use category to do that, if that makes sense. Like a small warehouse may be okay for, in certain areas, but a heavy smokestack steel mill may be completely inappropriate. So it's all things to take in consideration.
Yeah, I noticed, like ready-mix concrete, is that a conditional use, or is that?
It is not.
A heavy by right. What should it be, I guess, is the question.
Which one are you looking at?
The ready-mix
Ready-mix concrete?
concrete.
Yeah.
Yes, and to Commissioner Keever's point, ready-mix concrete, we moved from the light category to the heavy category. But maybe since, the hours of operation tend to be late in the night and they tend to be, somewhat loud, that particular use may warrant y'all to take a look at it to determine that if blanket, plain vanilla industrial zoning is appropriate.
Well, I think what we're moving to is we used to have just one industrial, right? But now having light industrial and heavy industrial, every time we zone something industrial now, we won't necessarily be opening the door to that question of a concrete plant like we had the other day.
Correct.
So I think that's going to solve that. I can't think of a situation in a heavy industrial area where a concrete plant would not fit, because all those things are usually noisy. They have some dust sometime, a lot of truck traffic, So I think I like just putting that under the heavy industrial. Are you talking about maybe having as a conditional use?
The only reason I say,
under
we
light?
have some existing properties that are vacant properties that are zoned industrial. So,
Now, how will that, in the future, do they need to be identified as light or heavy? can we go back and do
Oh,
that with that
absolutely,
application,
yeah.
or?
Correct, and that's kind of a trick that if we switch the zoning, right now, I mean, we have light industrial and heavy industrial. It's in the same zoning, but determined on the use will determine the buffers, width, right? So if it's light industrial, it's 150 feet, and then, heavy industrial is 300 feet. And so if we were to change that, and we have not addressed, it's one of the things the final things we're working on is the zoning classification. If we change that, then to two separate zonings, then we've got to figure out what the disposition is of all the existing zonings that are out there. My guess is it would probably fall into the heavy zoning category, so that it's not considered a down zoning, but I do not
That would be a
know.
liability if we downzoned it to a light industrial.
That would probably create some legal issues potentially for,
Possibly, yeah. Say that.
But it's somewhat the same, I mean, it is somewhat the same in that you can put your heavy industrial uses in any industrial zone property if you had the proper buffers. You can also put a light industrial use in a heavy industrial zoning, if you had the proper buffers. So, what we're really doing is basically saying that our existing zoning, we're changing the name to heavy industrial, and then creating a light industrial category. And I think that could be one way that we look at it, but
So all we're doing now, just make sure I understand, is we're just controlling buffers and setbacks by the light.
the
and
use.
heavy.
correct.
If it's industrial, they can do all these things now. It just determines what we require of them is all.
in the buffer, that's right.
Correct.
And so maybe it's a thing where we just go forward, we clean up as we go forward.
Yeah. I just think it doing it within light industrial and heavy industrial in the zoning is not gonna address existing properties that are zoned industrial.
Right, still
That
got-
may really only need to have the light industrial use,
That's right.
but we can't impose that. So it helps that regard.
There's a couple things on here, Tim. We got warehousing and heavy industrial as a permitted use. You got trucking companies as a conditional use. Why would you differentiate the two? It's one and the same, really.
Well,
I think both of those should be allowed in heavy. Because you're not, a
Where did you
trucking
get the
company wouldn't
conditional use
typically stack containers or anything like that.
oh, okay. And so, all right. So the first page
Unless I'm reading
is the
wrong.
permitted uses, right? And then what we did when we're working on that, that what's it called? Table of permitted uses, right? That will change this, right? And so that is that second page,
Right.
where we move some items from, and I'll agree, trucking companies is too vague. I think what that should be is container storage, chipper there, but there's that there too. So we
Yeah.
need,
I mean, you could have, it's really two different things. You have trucking companies that move containers but aren't allowed to stack.
right,
So when you start stacking containers, that changes things in a big, big way, visually and everything else. So, I mean, I could see doing the stacking portion as a conditional and heavy. I don't know if I would do that in a light industrial area. But if you're gonna allow warehousing with trucking associated to it in heavy, it's kind of, warehouse is a big old trucking company, is all it is. It's a trucking company with a big building. So they're kind of the same thing. In fact, they could have more equipment there than a typical trucking company would. Trucking
why
companies
is
would have.
warehouse facilities in both?
Yeah, some
Oh,
of
there-
there's some redundancy in here too.
Both,
There's
yeah,
junkyards in light industrial and heavy is conditional. I would keep that out of light.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we gotta go over this conditional use, I mean, this table of permitted uses.
Some of these things really should
I
be
didn't even
heavy
know
only
until
conditional.
yeah, some of these.
I got a question, is conditional use by putting more things in the, since we don't have the differentiating zoning right now,
Yeah.
if we put more things in the conditional use category, which may be what you're intending to do here, does that give us a legal measure of control to protect constituents and properties around? Because if they don't already have that use in place.
That's right.
Wouldn't that'd be a legal way that we could come back and look at that individual?
And I think that's the point, right, is that you may, what is now, in this situation, a permitted use in heavy industrial, if you make it a conditional use, then at that point, if the use is not in existence, they will then have to come back to the board and get the conditional use approval, and it goes through the same process as a rezoning.
It's like a text amendment. And,
Right, and so we permit them to do it, and then if you all want to add conditions, and there's kind of a list of conditions on the conditional zoning, protect, protect surrounding properties, that sort of thing, that you can use as a basis for putting those conditions on, and then, or you can simply, like I said, or you can simply say, it's not appropriate for that site. There's no conditions I can put on this that would make it appropriate for that site.
So let me give you an example and see if this is what you're trying to do. Take ready-mix concrete, for example. Right now, it's a permitted use in heavy industrial according to a new zoning of light industrial and heavy industrial. But I've already got my property zone industrial. I've got 50 acres. I want to put a concrete plant out there, say. If we move that to the category of conditional use, if I haven't already got that use on my industrial property, then the planning board and this board have an opportunity to review that to make sure it's appropriate. Because now we can remove it from permitted use to a conditional use, which allows us to buffer as we're transitioning to zoning of I-1, I-2.
you're
That's it,
assuming your
yeah.
property may have been rezoned 15 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
And since I'm not
Under a
using it,
different-
I'm not grandfathered for a use if the zoning, if we change within the industrial that this is gonna be a conditional use, so that we don't have this little 10-acre tract that is zoned industrial 10 years ago, and somebody can legally say, I'm putting this out here, even though it's right next to some residents.
That's right, and so, and use the other example with the junk cars, right?
Yeah.
We had existing junk car export companies operating in industrial zoning. We turned it to conditional use. They were allowed to continue to operate under their previous requirements. They were effectively grandfathered because they were an existing use. But if anyone tried to open up an additional, or they tried to expand their facility, then the new zoning requirements would take into effect. We didn't make the junk car export businesses illegal. We just simply made it subject to additional conditions. And some of them are set in the ordinance themselves, right? As for on-site storage and fencing and screening, and some of them may be site-specific that the board can, if the applicant agrees to voluntarily accept that condition on the conditional use rezoning, that would apply to that as well.
Will some of this be commercial and light industrial, like veterinarians, and are you trying to pull that out of commercial totally? I would kind of feel like that's agricultural type of.
It'd still be in a
Typically,
commercial.
all commercial is allowed in industrial, right?
Yes.
So,
He just
so,
rolls up.
So that we'll be in both categories?
Yes.
so it is,
Okay.
yes, it is. in
Okay,
both.
great.
Which raises my question. I've checked off several that on the heavy industrial that are listed on the light industrial. Do they really need to be there? Or should you just have anything permitted in light
Yeah, that's what I'm
industrial
Yes.
is in heavy, and then you only have the 4 or 5 or 6 that are left that are strictly heavy industrial?
That's right.
That would clean it up
And-
for me.
Andy, and I know it's splitting hairs, but it's important. Are all not conditional, by right, approved uses for heavy industrial, should they be, conditional uses in light industrial? Because you may not wanna zone it heavy industrial, because there may be one in there that makes sense.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So-
Under the
so
right
make those
circumstances with
conditional
smaller
uses that
buffers
require
and,
that.
yeah, okay.
If that makes.
So not
sense.
all of them, but some, like there could be some of them that are appropriate to be conditional uses in light industrial with the
Yeah,
reduced buffers.
that's right.
I got you.
If the fit is right. But that allows you to still possibly rezone it light industrial and not have to give it the heavy industrial just for them to get that use, which opens the door to a bunch of less,
Yeah, I agree.
depending on the area.
Yeah,
All
we're gonna
this is so specific to where it's at, and
Yeah, particularly until we get, long after most all of us are gone, 20 years down the road where these zonings are clarified and developed. So it's only when people come for new zonings and we get to actually set it for light industrial zoning.
correct.
Or until then, we need what you just said. I won't try to
Correct.
repeat it. Yeah.
I'm hoping we're still here in 20 years,
Won't be here in 20.
or at least on the earth.
Yeah, but I don't think we'll be in this position.
Oh, yeah, true, true.
I mean, to me, we can, you got the low-hanging fruit that are clearly conditional uses in heavy industrial, the chemical processing,
Yeah, the invasive type stuff.
the,
you know, I
the
mean, that's-
junkyards, if you will.
Yeah.
Stuff
that-
that,
To that point, could we define what?
I've been thinking about
Invasive,
that, but
you
it's
know,
so hard because,
Well, even if y'all can just give me a description, we can look at use tables for surrounding jurisdictions
Yeah.
and figure out the wording that needs to be in there to, where that peg fits in a description. So if you can kind of say, I don't know what this is called, but this is what needs to be
Yeah.
in conditional zoning, we can try and figure it out for you.
It'd be good also if somebody would note, this is also in commercial.
Yeah.
We would know it's not being pulled out of commercial into that, or,
we're not gonna catch everything, because with the,
No. They're right.
10 years ago, I would have never thought about the big box warehousing we see now.
Yeah,
I would have never envisioned that.
But we should try and catch as much as we can, and kind of give you the example when we were starting this table of permitted use. We put stuff in there that we don't have in this county that, quite frankly, we probably don't. We just don't want.
Yeah.
But in absence of it specifically being listed, a applicant can make an argument it fits in this existing zoning, and then we'd be somewhat forced to allow them in there.
Yeah.
And so that's why you want to make things such as adult entertainment clubs, right? Well, I don't want any of them. Well, but you've got to say that it's a conditional zoning, so that the argument cannot be made that it's an appropriate zoning for B3.
Yeah, because it's entertainment.
Right. Exactly. So
Yeah.
you've got to be able to kind of declare what those conditionals are, so that if the issue comes up in the future, we're ready for it.
And it would really be impossible to try to set the criteria that have to be met to get that conditional use, because
Right.
really the burden would be on that petitioner to show that it is appropriate.
Right.
I'm glad we're doing this. It's been a long time coming, and we've had so many instances where we didn't really have a fit or a talking point to the new zoning or the new businesses. Everything's changed so much.
And then you get those bait and switch scenarios that we see
Yeah.
all the time,
All the
which
time.
is,
Yeah.
hey, we want to put a 200,000 square foot warehouse, just, a kind of a, not a heavy use, and then they get it zoned industrial, and then they put a tire recycler in, which is.
Or they're gonna put a new tractor sales dealership there, and the next thing you get is.
And the one that needs to be in here as well, is any sort of landfill type operation, so that because a lot of these cases, where it's just recyclable materials or something like that, but they can be very intensive, and so we need to. I think they need to go to the board for a second look, prior to approval.
I would agree with that, for sure. And it gives constituents a chance to speak, have their voice
Yeah, I
heard
think-
as well.
Yeah, we, structurally, we kind of know the way we're going. I guess now it's just trying to nail down what uses fit where.
Okay.
And probably we need to all take this and put our thoughts to it and give it back to management so they can take our ideas on that and put something together for another meeting, a discussion, and hopefully a meeting for approval.
You know, I know there are a few people that want to offer some comments if,
Sure. Is there
Time
someone
permits.
tonight that wanted to speak to what we talked about in this zoning and uses?
There's one thing I would like to address if we could, and that's, you know, your mom and pop little trucking companies with 2 or 3 trucks and they're doing it in their yard. Can we put some limitations on that where, you know, there's a lot of them grandfathered in, got a couple of trucks, and then they get really busy and now they got 10 trucks. And now they got, you know, is there some way we could allow a small company like that to operate at that low level that's not hurting anybody, not getting any complaints, but starts to grow out of hand, and all of a sudden you get a whole new ordeal.
time to find a bigger place.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they're using that, and then the other guy has to go buy, you know, expensive land and expand his on industrial. And if there's an
Yeah, that would be
intermediate
additional conditional uses probably in the AR.
Yeah.
Because you might have some grandfathered folks in there that you can say, yeah, in this situation, you were in operation prior to zoning taking effect. But if you grow to this level, you're no longer protected.
Right. And then if you're giving them a chance to get started. You know,
Right.
because a lot of people don't have the money to go out and buy a facility and all that stuff. It's hard to do. But it would give them a leg up initially with small fleet of something of 5.
But
or
it should be
whatever.
very controlled and.
Very controlled,
yeah.
then you're not infringing on your neighbors or neighborhood or anything like that, and, I don't,
If you have enough acreage.
yeah, it'd be acreage, I would think, too, you know. Something that would go both ways, something to protect the people around you, and something that would give somebody a leg up and protect some of the people that are already operating like that, you know, in the community.
Okay, anything else we need to do with this tonight, or just take this?
Nope,
and
give
come up-
me your feedback on
thoughts
it.
and
I'll
give you
come
some
up with some
feedback?
ideas and I'll shoot it out to you.
All right,
Oh, thank you.
very good.
You-
Have
you may
anything else
have
you want to
somebody.
cover tonight?
Hey, so I was just
Can you
curious.
state your name
I'm
for the
sorry,
record?
Cherie McKenzie.
Thank you, Sheree.
So I was wondering, I think one of the issues that we keep running into is that there aren't the proper personnel to make sure that the businesses, DRT, are doing what they should be doing even after there are, say, fires or explosions. There's not anyone in our county who is equipped knowledge-wise to make sure that we're safe after things like that happen. There obviously are people across the nation and in our state who can do that, but what can we do to make sure that when something does happen, that it's being properly overseen once we realize there are issues? We know that they are enclosing containers currently, but we don't know what could happen with what they're doing, and there doesn't seem to be anybody now who can inspect it properly to make sure that we're safe. So what could we do to make that happen?
Can you help us with an answer for that, or am I putting you on the spot? Because I know we do some, and of course we report to the state, and they are the ultimate. But I know you have some involvement in trying to protect the community that way too. Do you want to? I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you got some thoughts that might help answer Ms. Cherie's,
It's not per se a zoning issue, I guess.
right?
Yeah, we do have the county fire inspector now. In regards to, I think one of these is about a specific location. We did have the state fire marshal's office out there Friday, and they had 7 inspectors there. So they went through the facility and.
And I can tell you to the point on the county fire inspector. I mean, you think it's just fire, but it's not, right? What it really gives us the ability to do is do site visits on a regular basis to these facilities, and whatever violation we see, even if it's not something that's in our jurisdiction, we can then report it. This is what happened out at an incident on Ebenezer Road, where we're having our fire inspector basically visit every single existing industry, large and small. And I will tell you some of the things, they found even in the larger ones were pretty alarming, but they've addressed them. In some cases, they found so many violations, that the first step they did was to report them to the state agencies that have jurisdiction in that area. But in addition to that, there were violations of local code, which we can then address with regards to fire, residency on industrial sites and that sort of thing. So, there is a mix, but we've got to be able to, have that person, that fire inspector that we have now, to be able to go out there on a regular basis and put eyes on what's going on these sites. Some cases you won't see it, right? You might miss something until there's an incident. And that's kind of, and that incident could be a fire, could be a safety incident, or it's simply a nuisance, right, that didn't exist before, that will warrant additional thing. But there are circumstances, and Clint will, maybe fill people in on there, that there are certain things that are jurisdictionally in control of by the state. Those are, and there are certain things that are in control of by the county, and there are certain things that are in control of by both, right? And so that's kind of what we've been working with in this fire inspector. It's only a year old, but I can tell you they're making a huge difference.
Yeah, and I think, Ms. Reed, that might help you a little bit. That position that they may not have all the expertise in it, but by having a position that now they can go out there on a regular basis in all these industries and see things that don't pass maybe the smell test, then they can report them to the agencies who aren't coming on a regular basis to look at them. So probably the incident you're talking about has alerted us all to beefing up our opportunities to catch them before they happen, even though most times they were happening after the fact. Now we can have an opportunity to at least see this does not appear right. Let's report this to this agency, or if it may be something we can handle through our own ordinance, through our code enforcement. So,
Can I respond to that?
sure, come on.
We have inquired.
Turn the microphone though. We record it so we can keep a.
We have inquired about if the person that was hired back in either June or July, if that person has the expertise to be able to know what they're looking at. And we were provided with a checklist, if you will, that assesses the building. And the check sheet is like, do they have exit signs? Do they have sprinklers? It doesn't look like anything that is enough, that is sophisticated enough to catch the things that happen. And that's my concern, is I feel like there needs to be somebody who actually, I don't mean to discredit this person they hired at all. I don't think that you can prepare for something like DRT if you don't have the expertise in that type of chemical industrial. And this young lady is not prepared, from what we've been told, to be able to do that. And I could be wrong, and I'll stand corrected if I am.
Well, I think the checklist they've got are the things that are under our authority. What we're saying that this now at least gets somebody inside there that can, if they notice something that looks odd and different, it gives us an opportunity beforehand.
Yeah, I appreciate. That's what I'm asking for.
is
Is there
dying
some
behind
way
it,
we can
yeah.
implement something that says, if there's a fire, if there's an explosion, if there's this, you have to call someone in that does know what they're doing and not depend on our
we do
local
that.
resources.
I think we've done that.
Yeah, and I could say, that checklist is not a list of her credentials. She is the most credentialed person that we have in code enforcement here, and but what the checklist is your kind of bread and butter stuff that you have to do on a fire inspection.
Yeah.
But once you get inside, right, everything is fair game. Right? Any violation that they see, even if it's not something that falls under a regular fire inspection, becomes open to further investigation, and in some cases by us, right? Could be a code environment. It could be a wetlands disturbance. Could be filling in a floodplain. Could be nailing a window shut or something to that effect, right? That that becomes if it's not handled by that person directly, it can then be handed off to the person who can handle it in there. But what this individual who is, like I said, she may be in there for fire inspection, but it's just like that incident on Ebenezer. All the violations that they had, very few of them were related to fire, and all of them were reported to either the necessary outside jurisdiction, like EPD, who has enforcement authority on areas that we don't, to code enforcement, like Greg, who was just up here. So it's just don't just look at that kind of that little checklist and think that's all they're looking at. She's looking at everything when she goes in there, and she's looking for the red flags.
And I think we say
but
the credentials are more than what that checklist is for.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
I would hope that we would continue to educate those folks that are doing the fire inspection for other things they need to be looking for when they're in there that may not be on the fire inspection checklist.
That's right.
Currently, it's my understanding that they have an annual check, like any industrial has an annual check. But would it, be possible and make sense to maybe visit them more frequently if they're having multiple fires and
Well, I
explosions?
think we are.
and-
Yeah.
I think
If
absolutely.
there are multiple instances, then we can, then we have the ability to go in there and do interim reviews.
Surprise inspections, I believe, too, right?
Correct. Well, we've started off, and I'll just say this: we have started off because we have not been doing the inspections. We started off by letting them know, hey, there is a fire inspector now, and we'll be coming, in this date range, type of thing. So, some of these businesses have been open for 10 years and may not have had a fire inspector, and so we're trying to get the businesses used to it. In some cases, it's stuff that's it's non-intentional. They don't replace the backup battery in the fire system or something to that effect. We're working with them to get up to date. Right. But, after this first year and this first batch, after they've made all the corrections we've asked them to do, then we'll move to something that's a little more impromptu. It's kind of, the surprise inspections and not encouraging compliance, but enforcing it with a little bit heavier hand. Now, in the case of industrial processes, they're very difficult to determine, whether something's been properly maintained because you can't get into the internals of the machine. But I will tell you, like I said, even some of the larger firms out there, had a list of things that they needed to get addressed. It's not just the smaller kind of mom and pop operations who, don't have the funds to, properly handle, environmental or fire issues. It's the larger ones too, and we're hitting them up.
Yeah.
I think
I'm
just
sorry,
having,
Phil.
just industry knowing there are eyes and ears that are gonna be watching is probably gonna do as much as anything.
Okay.
knowing
Keeping that person trained and skilled to see
Sure,
beyond the
sure.
fire code so that we can detect those things early enough and call for help.
And
I hate to
OSHA
cut this off.
violations, you name it. Believe me, I've seen, these reports, and so I just said, you can let OSHA know, but give them, a heads up and saying you can't do that. You can't have that there. It's a danger to your employees, that sort of
You
thing.
have these chemicals exposed. They can't be stored here. The different things they may
Yeah,
notice.
you can't have
Yeah.
extension cords taped to the floor. And that sort of thing. And so,
I hate to cut this off, but we got 3 minutes for our regular meeting, and I think we're going to need some bathroom breaks.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comments, and I hear you. I think we do have to make sure that our staff stays trained so they can address those things as well.
you want to say something?
Is Greg wanting to say something?
I don't know if this will set anybody's mind at ease, but I've been on these inspections with our inspector, and she has a very keen eye for things. She's hazmat certified. She's a certified firefighter. She's got all the credentials, and she's looking for things that are hazardous.
Could cause
So,
issues in our community before they happen.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's the key, getting that regular inspection that we didn't have before we had the position. So it's gonna develop. There's no doubt about it. It's gonna
Yes,
develop, it's gonna improve.
she's more than qualified to discuss.
And hopefully, like Tim said, a lot of times if industry knows that we're watching, they'll be better. They
Yes.
won't, they
I
won't
think
let
the
them
first things you look, is anything that could be a danger to the community or our personnel that may have to go on site.
Yeah.
Correct.
You know.
Yep.
That's,
But she's well qualified, and she does a great job.
Yep. I'm looking for good things on that, and so we don't have any more of the past issues that we've had. Be great. All right, I hate to do this, but we need to move from our workshop to our regular session, and some gentlemen here might need a bathroom break, and ladies as well. So let's take 5 minutes, and if you could be right back, we'll try to get started as close as we can to 5 o'clock for our regular meeting. We're going to call to order the Effingham County Board of Commissioners meeting this March 19th, 2024 at 5:08 p.m. Sorry for the slight delay. We had a workshop beforehand. We'll call roll. Mr. Floyd?
Here.
Mr. Burdette? Here. Mr. Corbett's here. Mr. Deloach?
Here.
Mr. Loper? Not present. Mr. Kiefer?
Here.
We do have a quorum. I would ask everyone if they please rise for the invocation given by Commissioner Deloach and remain standing as he leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag.
Please bow your heads. Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to gather here this afternoon. Please be with us while we conduct our business for the county. And thank you for our many blessings, and help us to remember that all good things come through you, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. We have our agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda tonight?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and board members, we do have one change under new business number 10. That is the policy that was discussed in the work session, consideration to approve a standards of operating policies and procedure manual for the Code Enforcement Office. We would like to remove that item at this time, and there are no other changes.
Okay. We have a motion to accept the agenda with removal of item 10 under new business.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kiefer, second by Mr. Deloach. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, it passes unanimously. We have our agenda. Welcome to everyone who's here for our meeting tonight. Comments shall pertain to the agenda items only. Should you wish to make remarks, please come to the microphone, state your name clearly for the record, and then if you can speak 2 to 3 minutes to the item and keep it to that, it allows others to speak that may want to also speak to the item without prolonging the meeting. Correspondence for this tonight, this meeting, our agenda packets have been posted on the county website. Any additional documentation has been presented in the meeting or in our clerk's office, and hopefully you've had a chance to review that if you asked for it. And so we'll be prepared to allow you to respond at the appropriate time with that information. The next item on our agenda, of course, is our consent agenda. These are items that are routine items which there will be no discussion unless a board wants to remove one so that it can be discussed more fully. And with that, I'm going to read the consent items and then ask for a motion to approve them all at one time. Item number 1 is an agreement, consideration to approve to renew a memorandum of understanding between Effingham County Board of Education and Effingham County Board of Commission for ambulance services at various Board of Education events. Item 2, consideration to approve to renew a technical service support agreement with Stryker. Item number 3, consideration to approve, to ratify, and affirm a proposal for additional scope of work with Weston Sampson for the HMP update. Item 4, consideration to approve a location agreement with the Historic Effingham Society for the use of the Early Street House, located at 204 Early Street for the Old Days in Effingham annual event. That is our consent agenda. Have a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Deloach, second by Mr. Burdette to approve the consent agenda as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, it does pass unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, if you will, it is noted on the agenda, but the text is not there for item number 6, which is your minutes, would be consideration to approve the March 5th, 2024 regular meeting minutes.
Okay, I apologize. I see minutes but didn't have the date. So we do need a motion to approve the March 5th minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
Got a motion by Mr. Deloach, second by Mr. Kiefer to approve the March 5th minutes as presented. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, it passes unanimously. Thank you for that. Item number 10, unfinished business. Consideration to approve a second reading of an ordinance to amend Part 2, Official Code, Appendix C, Article 5, Table of Permitted Uses of the Effingham County Code of Ordinances. This was approved at first reading March 5th. Any discussion or motion to approve second reading?
Make a motion to approve the second reading.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Burdette, second Mr. Deloach to approve the second reading. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, it passes unanimously. Item number 2 is a second reading, consideration to approve the second reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 62 signs of the Effingham County Code of Ordinances. This was approved at first reading on March 5th. Do you have a motion to approve second reading?
Make a motion to approve the second reading.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Deloach, second by Mr. Kiefer to approve the second reading. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, it passes unanimously. Item 3 is a second reading as well. Consideration to approve a second reading of an application by James Dasher as agent for Lane Nolan Earl Jr. to rezone 185 acres located at 311 Earl Lane Road from AR1 to AR5 to allow for a residential development. This is map number 435, parcel number 19 in the 2nd District. First reading was approved on March 5th. Is there any discussion or motion to approve the second reading?
And I'd just like to say, we're having the second reading now because he added the fencing to protect those residents who was close to. And with that in mind, and I do appreciate that, recommend we approve the second reading.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Burdette, second by Mr. Deloach to approve the second reading. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, it passes unanimously. For the constituents, like Mr. Burdette said, all these second readings that were not done at the last meeting are because we added a condition in protection of maybe residents or something around there. And when you add a condition, you can't do both readings at the same meeting. It has to go to the next meeting. Item number 4 is a second reading, consideration to approve a second reading of an application by Kevin Forbes as agent for TNT Exley Properties, Thomas and Hutton Engineering Company, to rezone 1,051 acres located on Highway 21 from PD to PD to allow for the amendment of a planned development. This is map number 446D, parcel number 6, 9, and 11 in the 2nd District, and the first reading was approved 3/5/24. And there were some conditions. I probably just want to hear from in that area to make sure that we understand that they're correctly, and then I'll take a motion to the second
Now,
reading.
these were submitted since the last discussion, correct?
We gave a list of items that they agreed to do, and I guess they just need to follow up management. Are all those in the documents we have here, those items?
Were there any additional items added, is what I'm asking?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So, all of the, conditions that you asked for, at the previous meeting have been added, and I can tell you what those are.
Why don't we go through those briefly?
Absolutely. So, that the 450 feet requirement, was removed, and that was, and here, I can bring this up for you. Let's take a look here. So that requirement, those buildings that you see on this photo, if any of those buildings, building 1, let's see, these buildings here, if you can see my cursor, if these buildings here are built, they are at least 450 feet away from the property line. If they are built, the corresponding berm does need to be built.
Yeah, 450 went away was the condition.
Yes,
So if they
it
build
did.
either one of those, they'll do the berm.
Yes.
That was one. What was the others?
So if building 1, 2, or 3 is built, then berm A will be constructed. So that was the second. The next condition I'm about to read, the acreage is actually not 7.80 acres. It is actually 24.9. So that number there is incorrect, and I do apologize for that. That acreage will remain commercial, and I will show you that. Here is the depiction to show you
Gotcha.
that acreage will remain commercial.
Right.
And that is in the text as well, so
Right,
it
the
is
board
shown.
members, that was in the original PD, and we asked them to put that back in their sketch plan or whatever. And they did that for us. I wonder if there was a third one, wasn't there?
There's one more. So depending on the location of the temporary concrete plant, the corresponding berm shall be constructed.
That's right. Wherever that concrete is planted, there will be a berm started across from that. That's the three things.
And then staff and the applicant did go through the PD text. We went through it together, and worked diligently to make sure that all of those conditions were placed in the text in the proper way.
And I appreciate the developers and the owners complying with that. It's gonna be
You
great.
guys, and I appreciate you guys vetting that again and making sure it represents what we approved last time. I know staff worked hard on that one, so thank you.
Is there any questions or discussion from the board? Do you have a motion to approve second reading?
I have a question.
I'll entertain a quick question. We're not having a public hearing tonight, but I'll entertain a quick question.
My name is Joel Stewart, and unfortunately wasn't able to attend the last meeting, but I'd like to ask this question anyway. And maybe I'm not understanding this, because this might be a little beyond my technical understanding of
Sure.
what all the pages and pages of documents on this are. But if I'm reading it correctly, it looked like our current stormwater management, that are the current rules and ordinances that are governing these kinds of developments, the Water Resource Protection Ordinance and the Stormwater Management Local Design. Is that not in force here, and this is actually under some other kind of provision?
It is.
Am I reading that
It is
correctly?
enforced, but there's agencies that they have to comply with. Tim, you wanna, that Georgia Soil and Water is gonna check
Sure.
those areas.
So,
They have to
yes.
be in compliance with all that, to answer your question, but.
When it comes to stormwater regulations, we essentially administrate and enforce the rules set by the state. So we wouldn't be able to waive those unless we and keep our ability to keep our good standing with them. So we are not.
We haven't waived any of those. In other words, we're adding additional conditions to what the state.
So that page that's in all those pages of documents that deal with that are essentially applying additional things?
Yeah, I'll
I
let
mean,
them answer that question.
am I,
We can't take away from the state's requirements on water leaving the property for drainage. If you can answer.
Apologize with me, I'll clarify.
Yeah, if you clarify real quickly, so we need to get on with the second reading, but I want to make sure his.
My name is Murray Marshall. I represent the Exley family. There is an Exhibit D in your packet that is the Stormwater Management Local Design Manual that is applicable to the Exley North-South PDMU. It's not changing from what has been in place since 2007. Okay.
Right.
Just want to make that clear. Thank you.
But that, Tim, nothing in that can dampen the state's requirements.
No, it has to comply with the state
Right, so
requirements.
that if there was a conflict in there, I don't think there is, but if there was, the state requirements would.
They have a review process. They would kick that back if there's something that doesn't coincide with current state regulations.
So what's in there, and I don't remember because it's been a while since I've looked at it. If it conflicts with the state requirements, the state's still gonna make them
Right.
do what they have to do for drainage.
They would be able to get a,
conflict with our zoning, with our ordinances? I didn't really understand.
No,
the
it
purpose
didn't
of
conflict,
being-
there's no conflict there. This is a PD, so the zoning for that PD is within that, the text within that PD becomes the zoning.
yeah, if they don't meet those guidelines, you can't get a permit. So they have to meet those guidelines and get their permit. If it doesn't come back and meet state guidelines, they won't get a permit, so they have to reapply, so.
So it's kind of what Mr. Murray was saying, in 2007, this PD was set, there's a zoning, a PD is its own zoning. It doesn't come under heavy industrial, light industrial, it's its own zoning. And at that time, whoever's on the board and developers, probably before you were involved in this, spoken to the text. Huh?
I was here.
Well, yeah, I didn't know if you've been from beginning, but they design a text that becomes there were public hearings on it, it became the zoning that was approved. And that zoning now cannot conflict with the state requirements for water and stormwater, okay? All right, hopefully that helps clarify a little bit. Is there a motion any other discussion from the board first? Motion to approve the second reading?
Make a motion to approve the second reading.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Burdette, second by Mr. Deloach to approve the second reading. All in favor say aye. Any opposed, no. Hearing no no's, it passes unanimously. Item number 5 is a public hearing. The planning board recommends approving an application by Penny West to zone 5 acres located at 37680 Dixie Highway from AR1 to AR2 to allow for new home sites, map number 339, parcel number 6 in the 3rd district, postponed from 3/5/24. I believe, so the commissioners consider their request in regards that this was going to be for rental properties. So we'll open a public hearing. Am I correct? You want to add anything to what I just said?
No, I think you've covered it. Other than staff has spoken, again, with the applicant, she will be living on a property that is adjacent to this one. And per the Effingham County Code of Ordinances, mobile homes are allowed within the AR2 zoning district. So staff and planning board are still recommending alternative number 1.
All right, so I'll open to the board for discussion and then see if there's any comments from the public. We'll do it kind of reverse this time since we already had a public hearing. Does anyone want to speak to the request that's been put before us tonight?
My name is Joshua Parrish. I'm 400 Clive Shawnee Road. I'm concerned about what the rezoning would do to the property value of mine, and it also will, I guess you say, condense the rural community, so to speak. I have concerns of those impacts in the area.
Yeah, I think there was some concern all around, so we were going to look at this again tonight and get some time to put some thought to it. Without trying to restrict the property rights of a property owner, we want to make sure it's a wise rezoning. Thank you. If anybody else from the public wants to speak, but I wanted to get the board, because I think the board wanted some time to digest this idea as well. Is there anybody in the public that's, other than the gentleman that spoke, that's in opposition to this rezoning request? And Ms. Penny, is the applicant here tonight? Right, okay, I have some questions for you. All right, how about the board? Any comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman, this is just my opinion. Obviously, this is in my district, but very familiar with the area. And there's a lot of timberland in this area, a lot of row crops in this area, and it's a lot of personal residences in this area. In my opinion, I just look at this as a non-conforming request. I don't see anything else like this in this community. I don't see any, I know it's 3 different lots, but I don't notice any other mobile home parks in this area. So I just can't support the request.
And I'll let you address, that's my concern too, that it's kind of like a miniature mobile home park, which we have a special zoning for that. But if you want to address the comment.
Well, first of all, it's my understanding that it was against the law for me to even be asked if it was going to be family or rental. So, you know, I would like to know how that was even asked of me.
I don't know that that's against the law. Our attorney can answer that question, because we have developers who build properties, and one thing we've created requirements so that developers can't just go out there and get a 400 housing unit and then turn it into rental properties, which usually does not hold the same value as people who own their own homes. So, I mean, Mr. Lee, if you'd like to address, is that when you're looking at use of the property, I would think for zoning that becomes pretty pertinent to non-conforming use or conforming use.
Yeah, I'm smiling because I don't think I've mentioned it to you, but Ms. West works for my firm, so I can't make any give you any opinion tonight.
Okay.
So if that's a question, I can have somebody else take a look at it for you.
Yeah, I'd like to know, because I know we've addressed other developments where there's going to be rental, and been very public about that, and I hadn't heard anybody accuse us of, in fact, realtors have asked us to address the issue where property is being developed just for rental, because it's coming issued nationwide, where corporations from, I mean, you're a very, I know, small piece of property and so forth, but it's a larger scale where corporations come in and they buy up a whole development. Somebody will come get it zoned, and they'll buy it up, and they'll put up whether it's mobile homes or single-family dwellings or whatever, and rent it. And that becomes an issue for our community. So
And-
I'm not sure the use is not legitimate questions when you're looking
And
at.
also, just hopefully to help Commissioner Deloche feel a little better about it, I do live on the property. My 6 grandchildren live on the property. So, I'm going to be very cautious of what happens here.
And I definitely hear you on that, and I hear that, I've heard that a lot over 10 years. But here's the seat that I'm sitting in. I know you have the best intentions, and it may work out fine. But then the next 10 neighbors, they do this, and all of a sudden, we've got 40 different new lots approved. So, once I open that can, it's no going back.
But, and I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but everybody else is gonna come in here and lie to your face, and I didn't. I told you the truth. I said, it's gonna be for rentals, because I'm not gonna lie for anybody's approval. But everybody else, I've sat here and I've listened to other meetings online, and they come in here and, they look at every one of you in line and say, oh, it's for family.
Well, we
I
can't-
didn't do
I
that.
can't.
We can't respect.
Yeah,
can't
but
answer
you,
that.
but you know it's the truth.
I
Can't answer
know
that.
I don't know that that's the truth. I'm sure that it's happened, but I don't know that that's a predominant thing.
I have to probably personally I'm looking at it from a different angle. I'm trying to look at it at face value, and the use is still residential. That's truly the use we're looking at, not rental is not the use. Residential is the use. And I don't, aside from other information, it's consistent with what we've done. That's just my opinion. I mean, in due respect, I understand Commissioner Deloach's position. I do. That's just my
Well, we
opinion.
recently turned down the same request, similar request on Ornsdorf Road.
We did. We've approved some of these and we've turned some of them down. Typically, it's been, though, we were told that it was gonna be for
Yeah,
family.
2 weeks ago, you approved one 8 minutes from me for more lots than mine because he said it was family. I don't understand how I can be
And you're telling us that
penalized.
they're actually putting mobile homes on that and renting them, what they're doing.
I don't know. But
And I'll be
that-
surprised if that guy can even put anything on the property, period.
But you
'cause
still,
he's-
but it was
he's
still approved. That's the point. It was
It
still
was approved. It was under different circumstances.
because I'm telling the truth and saying it's rental.
Well, not necessarily, but anyway.
Yeah.
Now, I appreciate your interest in sharing exactly what you're gonna do with the
Yeah,
property. I'm not sure, I hear what you said about the use. I think because we've addressed rental property as a use.
But not in AR2. That's my opinion.
I got you, like, you're talking about the AR, the multifamily.
Yeah.
We've addressed it. Yeah. What would be the difference in addressing an AR2 and a multifamily?
Wait.
Whether it's rental or not, what would be the difference?
Well, I can tell you how the only place we've addressed rental is in R5. And in that case, we've stated that, no more than 20%, I think, of the properties can be rented in the first year after CO, or something to that effect, similar to that. But on the case of, we just assumed under multifamily and duplex and R4 zoning, which is the mobile home park, that would be an acceptable use. And we just never addressed it in any of the AR properties. And simply because they're just generally less dense, and so it's not come up.
And each of these lots will be how big? 5 acres?
No, the total, it's a 5-acre lot in
It'll be
each
1
one.
acre,
Yeah.
1 acre, okay.
How many total mobile homes?
There's currently 1, and I was asking for 3 more
On how many acres?
on 5 acres.
5. And the other acre's gonna be yours where you're gonna live.
Yeah, I currently live on the 5 acres now,
Right.
but yes, and I'm gonna be truthful about that too. I will be
Three
moving
including yours or 3 additional?
3 additional,
So it'd be 4 total.
right.
4 total, then
So still less than.
And my other property, meets this one. They They border each other.
It adjoins right here. Oh, sorry. Right
Okay, thank you so much.
And
These
if,
two, you own these two beside each other, is that what you're saying?
This one?
These
and
two
then-
lots?
I own, there's the 5 acre we're talking about,
Yep.
and then I own another 17 acre, and then another 5
Where the
acre.
cursor is at.
And they're all right there together.
Where's the other 5 acres?
The other 5 acres is right here.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But those don't have anything to do with this particular.
No, sir.
No. that's
And,
what you own.
you know, if you would feel better, me going down, asking for 2 additional units, you know, that's fine. My husband of 21 years recently passed away, and I'm just trying to provide for my future. You know, I'm trying to do something to help myself. So if, you know, if that would be better, you know, I'll do that.
Would that make it more tolerable?
I'm just gonna be the bad guy here. It's still,
I'm torn on this,
Information.
and I have supported these things, and I've always, not always, but 99% of the time, supported property rights. I do see where this could open a can of worms, but it's your property.
Yeah, I'm trying to see both sides, you know, it's a 1 acre tract, you are permitted to put a mobile home on a 1 acre tract.
Yes, sir. So per the zoning, AR1 and AR2, she can have mobile homes.
So,
But it's not a mobile home park, because there is a zoning for mobile
no,
home parks.
it's not.
Not a
yeah.
mobile home park.
Mobile home parks are a lot more dense. That's why I'm stressing this. It is an acre of land, and you can't put a mobile home on an acre of land. It may be setting a precedent, but it may be a precedent that we can't really legally battle. I don't know.
You have another 17 acres, you plan to cut that up and put a bunch of mobile homes over there?
No, because the 17 acres is where me and my son and grandchildren are going to be living. So it's going to stay a large lot.
All right, thank you so much. You may have more questions. I'm going to close the public hearing and see if there's any final discussion from the board and if anybody wants to entertain a motion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any final discussion?
Roger, where you at?
I see both sides. I do. I'm
I
trying,
do.
but I'm trying to just look at it.
Table this and talk about it more.
Well, we've tabled it
That's what we
already.
did last meeting.
No,
So, I don't know if it's fair to the constituent to,
Do we need to get a legal answer outside of Lee?
that might be a
Whether
good
well,
idea.
only if you think it's going to impact your decision.
It could very well, if it's a legal issue. Or if we're gonna open up a can of worms and
Well,
something we
we-
can't.
Here- here's
this
my, here's my point. She shared with you, she wants to rent these 3 properties.
Right.
All he's gonna be able to answer for us through another legal counsel is, can we ask that question? But the fact that she's gonna rent it doesn't impact your decision. You don't need that. I mean, we need the answer for future, but not for this decision. So I hate to delay it for our constituent.
I mean, I share in Commissioner DeLoach's concerns here. That's the last thing I'd wanna do, is open up a can of worms where we're dealing with this on an ongoing basis. The same token, I do believe her, and I think she would
Well,
do the right thing, and if it's a legal thing for her to do with her property, that's another side of it, so I am
and that's kind of where I'm falling down on.
absolutely torn in the middle here.
That's
so.
kind of where I'm falling down on, is that staff has reviewed it from the legal side of what's permissible. I think Mr. Loach raises a question about a non-conforming use, but when I look in that area, I don't know if that's fully going to be impacting, if I had a vote, the thought of non-conforming, because that's why I said she's got 17 and 5 acres. The other acres are pretty large. I don't know that there's an opportunity for a lot of this in that area to make it somehow non-conforming.
What would you suggest, in your opinion as the chairman?
I think because staff has recommended it, that it fits the legal background. I have a little bit of struggle with the non-conforming, since it's single-family residential dwelling to Commissioner Kiefer reminding me that we don't have a rental thing on this particular zoning. It's only on R5. I think I'd have to entertain a motion
I'm
to
not trying to
approve.
influence anybody's thought. I'm
No,
just,
trying to put
for
it all-
me, that's where I'm
just trying to put it all
keep
together
falling
based on all
back.
that I've heard.
And I
I
respect
think she would have
everybody's.
legal grounds to come back on this board if we denied
Yeah.
her.
All I've heard tonight, I would entertain a motion to approve. If I don't get a motion in a second, then I'll ask for a motion to deny. But I would entertain a motion to approve tonight based on what I'm hearing from management, staff, and public and everything.
Well, it's my district. So you're not gonna let me make the motion? I mean, I'm District 3.
Yeah, you can make a motion.
I wanna make the motion.
Okay, make a motion.
I'm gonna make a motion to deny because I don't care. You got 5 acres and you've got 3 mobile homes. I still consider a mobile home park and I consider it non-conforming. That's my opinion, and I'm making a motion to deny.
Okay, we have a motion to deny by Mr. Deloach. Is there a second? Do I hear a second? All right, that motion does not make it because it didn't have a second. So now I entertain a motion to approve. If it doesn't get a motion, then it'll,
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
okay. Motion by Mr. Kiefer to approve. Do I have a second?
I'm gonna second it.
Second by Mr. Floyd. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I think we set ourselves up if we don't.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor say aye. Any opposed, no.
Nay.
And so all approved except Mr. Deloach is a no. And with that, it does pass. Now, can we do the second reading since it wasn't unanimous? So second reading will have to be at the next meeting. Okay. So the first reading is approved. The second reading will have to be at the next meeting since it's not unanimous. Okay? All right.
Thank you.
That was a difficult issue, but I appreciate the board working through it with us. We go to new business, presentation of the fiscal year 2023 audited financial report by Lanier, Deal and Proctor. Is Lanier, Deal and Proctor here? Or is Mark gonna be Lanier, Deal and Proctor? I was all ready to talk with Lanier, Deal and Proctor. I guess I'll have to just beat you up tonight.
Well, I'll start off by saying that they had a conflict for tonight, and so we are gonna get them back here so you can dig deeper into some of the questions here. We just because it was delayed receiving it, we wanted to get up and make it part of our bond issuance. So
Yeah, sounds good. I do have some questions, things I think they need to provide information on, so I look forward to having them and addressing some things. Mark, you gonna pull it up on the screen so the public can see it? Is that what you're doing?
Oh, yes, sir, yeah, I'm
Okay.
getting right to it. Okay, good afternoon. I'm Mark Barnes, the Finance Director. The annual audit for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023 is complete, and the board has received an electronic copy, and you also have a hard copy in your packets. Tonight, I'm going to go over some highlights from the financial statements. Just real briefly, we're going to cover some income statement items up top, revenues, expenditures, and fund balances. And then we're going to move on to some highlights and accomplishments during the year. And then at the very end, we're going to have a summary of the audit results. Diving into the operating revenues, these are the normal operating revenues for our major funds. These don't include non-operating items like transfers between funds and some of the special sales of surplus and some unusual non-operating items like that. These numbers on this slide come from the Statement of Revenues and Expenditures, which in the audit's on page 18 for the governmental funds, and for the business type activities down here below, the water and sewer and those items, those are on page 26. We see that overall the revenues in both the governmental and enterprise funds are up from the year. There are some exceptions on those, but we're going to kind of go over those a little bit line by line. In the general fund revenue growth here, we see the 12.71% increase. That was driven primarily by sales tax receipts, the title ad valorem tax on vehicles, and investment earnings, which is the Georgia Fund 1 LGIP accounts that we keep. Those have been doing very well in the high interest rate environment, and that's kind of been a trend that's affected not just the general fund, but many of our major funds during fiscal year 23 and continuing into fiscal year 24. In the special tax district underneath the general fund, the property digest growth on the roads and recreation 2 mills is the largest driver of that revenue increase that we see there. Underneath that, we have the American Rescue Plan Act. The ARPA fund, the county had received its full $12 million disbursement a couple of fiscal years back, but in that fund, the revenues are recognized as we expend them on capital projects. And with the state grants that we received for the treatment plant and for the water line, we reshuffled that budget in fiscal year 24 and 23. So we're not spending the ARPA money on those projects. We're spending them mostly on the Hodgeville Sanitary Force Main, which is going to be starting construction in this fiscal year. So we'll see in fiscal year 24 and 25, we'll see more ARPA revenues because we're going to be incurring more of those expenses for that.
Did you say we're not spending ARPA funds on our wastewater treatment plant?
Well, this is our direct allocation that we get. The wastewater treatment plant is the state of Georgia's allocation of ARPA funds that they distribute.
Okay, I'm with you now. Okay.
Down below that, in the SPLOST 2017 fund, we see the revenues there went mostly down to a fraction of what they were the year before. The SPLOST 2017 ended, so in fiscal year 23, we had no revenues on SPLOST 2017 except for our investment earnings for the most part. And the counterpart to that is a couple lines down below that in the SPLOST 2021. We see those revenues jumped up in fiscal year 23 because the SPLOST 2021 bucket began collecting monthly in there. And we can kind of look at the 2022 SPLOST 2017 receipts of 16 million and compare that to the SPLOST 2021's receipts of 18.5, and you can kind of see how the monthly SPLOST revenues have increased year over year. The T-SPLOST fund, in between those, the kind of like what we saw with SPLOST and what we saw in the general fund, the T-SPLOST tax increases have come through, kind of just with inflation. Those receipts have gone up. Down below that, the other governmental funds category. This category includes the Fire Fund, Development Services Fund, E911, and some other smaller funds. And it saw revenue increases driven primarily by the insurance premium tax revenue receipt for fiscal year 23. Page 57 of the annual report gives the detail to this category on fund by fund to see which individual smaller funds make up that total. Most of the funds in that category had smaller increases during the year. Development Services did have a decrease in operating revenues in fiscal year 23, but that's kind of expected as that one varies a good bit based on which construction projects are going on in the county. Down in the enterprise funds, down below that, the water and sewer saw increases related mostly to its charges for services. This is charges for water and for sewer billings each month mostly. But additionally, in fiscal year 23, we combined the water and sewer fund and the wastewater treatment plant fund. And so for this fiscal year in our financial statements, all of the wastewater treatment plant items are zeroed out and transferred into the water sewer fund. And that's why that looks a little bit unusual. In future years, it's just going to be the water system fund. And there won't be this transfer going on between these two funds.
Is the wastewater treatment plant revenue, is that from people who dump directly into the plant, like the pumping trucks?
That is a small part of it. There's also the base reuse fee that goes in the water bills each month for those that have that.
Reuse fee, okay, gotcha.
Probably a big chunk of it.
So this is probably a stupid question, but, by combining those funds, that'll follow the Gatsby rules. No issues there on?
Right.
Okay.
Yes. We originally were, in fact, the reason why it's presented the way it is in the financial statements this year is because the auditors felt showing it zero out and then next year not having it at all was a way to do it rather than just not having it at all in the audit this year. And that was after I think they spoke with the Department of Audits and Accounts to make sure that that was the best way to present that. So.
Okay.
And I will say one thing on that as well. Even though it shows up as one fund for water and sewer, internally that fund will be broken out by water and by sewer. so that we can track the P&L for those particular uses separately.
And get a better rate assessment that way when we do rate analysis. I think what
Correct.
we had before is we had the treatment facility that had very little revenues by itself. And what I'd wanted in the past, I want that under sewer, because that's definitely part of our sewer cost. And then, but then I want water broke out from the sewer, so we can define our water revenues and expenses, get rates set appropriately in the sewer to include our treatment facility. So in the future, that'll be a much cleaner look, I think.
Right. And at the bottom, we do see the self-insurance fund, that's medical. And the revenues on that decrease, the revenue decrease there is related pretty much to the stop-loss insurance reimbursements. When claims go over that stop-loss threshold, we still pay them, the fund pays them, but then we get reimbursed, and that reimbursement comes in as a revenue. So if those claims are kind of down, then those revenue reimbursements are kind of down too. And that's the primary driver there on that. And here we just have a graphical representation of the governmental funds from the previous slide. And blue is 2023, fiscal year 23, and we do see the big changes there in the general fund and in SPLOST and T-SPLOST. Going into the operating expenses, kind of like the revenues on the previous schedule, these are just the normal operating expenses. They don't include extraordinary items, inter-fund transfers and things like that. These numbers are also found on page 18 for the governmental funds and page 26 for the enterprise funds. And for our main funds here, we see some were over and some were under during the prior year. It's kind of a mixed bag. From the general fund, we had a one-time expense of $4 million to the Joint Development Authority in 2023. But in 2022, we had a one-time expense for the Parkway of $14.4 million coming out of there. If we controlled for those two items, we would see the general fund expenses would be up about 5 to 6% during the year, which is pretty much in line with inflation during that period. The special tax district's expenses were driven largely by transfers out to the other funds, including the transfer out for the water and sewer system debt service was a big item there. The hospital indigent percent change, we see that revenue goes down 60%. That's largely because in fiscal year 22, we had the COVID critical need payment, and we recouped that, and then didn't recoup that in the future, and so that revenue kind of dipped as a result of that. For the two SPLOST funds and T-SPLOST, expenses are going to fluctuate a pretty good bit each year just based on what capital projects are programmed for those funds in those years, and so that's why we'll see some big increases. SPLOST 2021 has a 775% increase. This is the first year that SPLOST 2021 was in effect for the full year, so that's pretty normal. The other governmental funds category, it included increased debt service for the regular SPLOST bond that was issued recently, and as well as capital outlays for the fire stations. Those are reflected in that increase, and that was the Hodgeville Fire Station and the Guyton Fire Station that were constructed with the bulk of their expenses hitting in fiscal year 23. On the self-insurance fund, kind of like what we talked about on the other side, we see expenses went down as well, kind of corresponding to those reinsurance revenue decrease we saw in the previous slide. And here, a graphical representation of those expenses. We see the general fund down for 2023 overall, and we see the increase we talked about in the other governmental funds there on the right. So we looked at the revenues first and the expenses, and the revenues minus expenses equals, your change to fund balance during the year. And so this slide kind of shows the net effect of the revenues and the expenses we were looking at, plus the effect of any non-operating items such as transfers, bond proceeds, and any other extraordinary events like that. Like before, this information is on page 18 and 26 of the annual report, and a detailed breakdown of these fund balances and any restrictions they have can be found on the fund balance sheets on page 16 for governmental funds and page 25 for the enterprise funds. The general fund is going to be covered in the next slide by itself, so I'm going to go down through some of these other funds real quick. In the special tax district, expenses in fiscal year 2023 saw an overall increase, but the revenues increased by even more, due in part to the transfer that the special tax district receives from the general fund based on the annual service delivery calculation that we do. So this fund balance that's in the special tax district can be used to assist with future water and sewer project, capital outlays, as well as any fire capital projects such as fire stations, roads, and recreation projects.
So was this the line item that I guess the special tax districts we did this year on the industrial, they'll hit this line item here going forward, or were those, that we have to create a new line item?
They're gonna be in here going forward. They are isolated inside that fund, so we can track them independently, but that's where they're housed right now. But they'll be in fiscal year '24, like you said.
Okay.
Like if you're familiar with QuickBooks, it's like a class within that group, because we gotta spend that for that district.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we isolate it that way, yes, sir. Down below that, the hospital indigent, the fund balance was reduced in fiscal year '22 for the COVID critical need payment, and then that was recouped in fiscal year '23. The fund balance in here is used to meet the annual $3.6 million obligation to the hospital authority, and that's normally paid out in monthly increments. In the T-SPLOST fund, its fund balance decreased as a result of road project expenses and spending down the bond funds that were issued out to go ahead and do those road projects, and also paying debt service on the bond. But on the T-SPLOST, we expect that to be the case. The water and sewer fund down in the business type activities in the enterprise funds, the water and sewer had an operating gain of $185K on just the operating revenues and operating expenses. But overall, its fund balance increased significantly more than that, and that was in part by the cost recovery fees, which are non-operating revenues, and also the transfers in for that year, which are non-operating revenues, including the consolidation of the treatment plant. So that's why we see kind of a big increase on its fund balance there. And the sanitation fund had a slight decrease in fiscal year 2023, about $41,000. This is an improvement over fiscal year 22, where the fund balance went down approximately $276K. But nonetheless, a $41K decrease is something that's going to be addressed in the next sanitation fee when that's set,
Now,
so that this fund is more self-sustaining.
I'm sorry, Mark, you said water and sewer operating had a net revenue over expenditures?
The operating did, yes.
Does that mean we're in the positive now? Because
Yeah,
I don't mean to be
I don't know. I don't
beat a
think
dead
it-
horse on that.
I think
know we
that's
talk
what-
about that.
I think
Those include the
fund
cost
had a net
recovery fees.
increase based on the
With the
transfers.
cost recovery fees, then we're in the positive.
No, the cost recovery fees are down there in the special items section, so before we even include those, if you look on page 26,
Yeah, I'm showing a total enterprise fund loss of $517,000 on page 26. We got a $500,000 loss, 367 from our water and sewer, and sanitation 41, and I don't remember what the non-major funds are, but total of 517,000 loss.
oh, you're looking below the,
Look at the income from operations.
if you go up a couple lines, a few lines above that, the operating income with the loss in parentheses. If you go up a few lines from the 367, 514.
Okay, I got you. You're looking at before the expense.
Right, just the operating revenues and the
The
operating
non-op,
expenses.
okay.
Yeah, before those extra items, the non-operating items, right.
And we got 20,000. Okay, I see 185 from the water and sewer. I got you. Okay.
And, so they had that operating gain, but the fund balance here we saw went up by a good bit more than that. And it was mostly because of the treatment plant's fund balance was transferred over there to the water and sewer, but also the cost recovery fees and those other items down there below the operating item section.
Yeah,
And
that's
then-
predominantly where the fund balance is increased from. It's from the
Recovery.
cost recovery and transfers in of $2.9 million.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the partially self-funded insurance fund, it did have a decrease in fund balance that year. However, fiscal year '23 did perform better on that than fiscal year 2022. The better gauge of how the self-insurance fund is performing really is given on a calendar year basis by our third-party administrator that, administers a plan. And they go through a full experience report that year, and that has more detail. And we did just receive that, I believe, just recently. And so that gives a little bit better, more detailed picture than the financial statements on the performance of that plan.
I might mention, while we're talking about self-insured, I talked to Tim today, I don't want to get into the weeds on it, but I think staff is looking at this, which is good. Recently, I had some medical expenditures that drew my attention that our current administrators of maritime, whatever you pronounce it, may not be doing, and I think they recognize the job they should be doing in negotiating costs. You know how you get this bill from the insurance company or from the hospital or doctor, $4,568, but the insurance is going to make them only allow 2,000 something, and then you start paying. Recently, my bills, there was nothing disallowed. And so my bill was a lot more than it would have been with better administration by Maritime. So my question to Tim is, and to the staff, is I want to see how much of this cost savings have we passed on to our employees by not having, I think you're on topic. He told me you're already kind of starting to look at that.
Right, so we're obviously looking to go out competitively for our plan administrator this year. But I can say even with that, if you remember the, as Mark was saying, the plans come up mid-year for us. We had because we went self-funded, we had the lowest increases that, that we've had in well over a decade.
Yeah,
so,
I can see it from these documents. We've saved money as a county, but I just want to make sure we're not passing some of that savings on to a cost.
I get what you're saying, that they're paying in higher costs, right? And that's one of the things that we just looked at.
Versus the 2,000.
That's right.
If we'd had some negotiation by our administrator.
Right.
So even though we didn't pay the premium and we didn't pay the cost.
We're going to negotiate costs down so that the employees don't pay more.
And I'd like to know if we've passed that on to our employees, and can we correct that through this new administration? I just make the board aware that there is an issue there that y'all are aware of that we need to research. Even though we're saving money on being self-insured, I want to make sure we're doing the best we can for our, because I became one of those that got bit by it, Okay. Mr. Mark, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, that's fine. So looking just at the general fund specifically, like we saw on the previous slide, the general fund balance increased by about $4 million in fiscal year '23. And this was driven mostly by revenues exceeding our budgeted expectations rather than expenses coming in under. Investment earnings in the general fund were almost $800,000 in fiscal year '23, compared to $40,000 in the previous year. That was a big part of that $4 million. Other big performers were, like we talked about earlier, the title ad valorem tax on vehicles and the regular lost sales tax. We did have some expenses come in a little bit under what we expected. Payroll was a little bit low, but it was mostly revenues coming in higher that resulted in our fund balance going up to the degree it did. For fiscal year '24, we've used more aggressive revenue estimates on these items. We've kind of been doing that for 2 or 3 years now. We've been putting more aggressive stuff, especially on the title ad valorem tax, but it's been meeting that and exceeding that for several years. So in fiscal year '24, we hopefully won't see as big of a surprise at the end of the year, where fund balance increases by that large
Well, I
of
hope
an
we
amount.
do.
Well, I mean, it's good if we know it's going to.
I hope we're more aggressive and we still see it, because we have a lot of capital projects to the plan of needing that fund balance to meet some of these capital project needs. I remember Mr. Deloach and I talked about, if we have this fund balance because of growth, we want to see a more a rapid addressing of certain roads and transportation things that we might have been waiting on some funding from the state that we could go ahead and address. And so, yeah, I hope, be aggressive, but I hope we continue to see the growth in that balance digest that produces revenues that do exceed.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I said, on the expense side, we did have some expenses lower than expectations, personnel expenses. And part of that, we're coming into the fiscal year 2025 budget season, and we're going to kind of sharpen our numbers on turnover savings and how we budget that, and also how we budget the major medical to kind of make that more in line with what we've seen actuals be in the past, so that those expenses come in more in line at the end of the year with what we expected.
But are some of those lower personnel expenses due like to the jail and the sheriff's office? I know sometimes they have a lot of vacancies, so.
That's kind of part of what leads to the fund balance increase, because if we budget to use that much, and we don't really have good turnover savings built into that, and then if they have a vacant position, then that basically goes to fund balance.
And then plus, most of that's eaten away because you have to fill those positions somehow, and it's eaten away by overtime.
That does happen too, yes.
Yeah.
But, and I don't think I mentioned that, but the fund balance, you know, last year was the first year that we made the change on the rainy day funds. So out of that 28.7 million fund balance, 25.6 is unassigned. So the vast majority of it is unassigned at that time.
What's the average age of our fleet now? Are we trying to target an average age or a?
Yeah, so we're, if you remember where we were just 3 years ago.
Yeah, I do.
It's
don't
been around.
remember that.
Yeah, it's been around. There is maybe a handful of older vehicles out there that we will replace this year. And other than that, you'll probably see nearly the entire fleet have a turnover. We'll actually start reselling some of the vehicles that we originally acquired 4 years ago before their residual value begins to decrease. So we're going to be kind of taking advantage of that situation that we're in because when we bought those first batches of vehicles, they were pre-COVID.
Maybe have some equity in them.
And we have substantial equity in them, yeah.
Okay, great.
So I'll run down these real quick. So in fiscal year 23, we implemented the second final phase of the salary study. Like y'all just spoke about, we had the continuation of the vehicle fleet overhaul. We had about 30 million in capital project expenditures across all funds in that year. If we compare that to the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2019, we had 9 million. So you can kind of see all of the projects that the county has going on, you know, is making a big impact. We implemented another new accounting standard. They like to throw those at us a lot. The GASB 96 was implemented, and that's basically taking the GASB 87 lease standards and applying that to software-based contracts. This year, that did not have a major impact on our financial statements, just because most of our software contracts are year to year. But if we were certain governments that have these big multi-year contracts that made some pretty big impacts, the hospital authority is a component unit of ours, and some of their numbers are in there, and you can see where some of their GASB 96 software contracts made a pretty big impact on their statements during the year. And then, speaking of software, several departments have started rolling out in fiscal year 23 and into fiscal year 24 very major software modernization projects. Development services with OpenGov, HR and payroll have started Paycor, and purchasing also rolled out OpenGov. And that's kind of really been major changes to how some of those departments function and is modernizing them a great bit during the year. Going to a summary of the audit results. So Lanier, Deal, Proctor, and Bloser did issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, and that's on page 3 of the annual report. There were 3 findings in the financial statements. They were related to the clerk reports and tax commissioner's offices. The nature of those findings and the elected officials' responses are on page 82. These are basically the same findings as the past several years. They relate to, in each of the constitutional officers' funds, bank reconciliation procedures and items related to those bank reconciliations. And there was an issue in the tax commissioner's office of excess funds, which I believe that was also the case last fiscal year.
So how do we correct that? I know with constitutional officer, you know, we approve their budget. I know that's a different situation, but is there a way we can address that going forward?
I know last year we talked about maybe trying to help.
Well, and we made an attempt. Tim needs to catch you up on what we did, and apparently it's not solving it.
Right, so in the case of, you know, we do sit down with each of them, you know, because generally our budget meetings occur, you know, shortly after the audit presentation. So in the case of the clerk of court's office, I think we immediately approved the hire of someone to help on the accounting side. in there. I believe it was a new position. Was it a new position? Yeah, it was a new position. And then we discussed the issues with the clerk. I mean, with the tax commissioner. Generally we were working on issues with QuickBooks that she uses over there, but they still weren't able to address them.
Well,
What
this is just
software-
go ahead.
What software is clerk of court's office using?
I think they use software from the state, right?
Is it a?
They recently, I think with
That's
the
what I was
past
gonna
year
comment
upgraded.
on.
Yeah.
It may have
If
been.
Seems
you're
like
in
that's an
court-
easy fix.
Oh, Green Court, yeah.
If you're not even doing your bank reconciliations, there's no way you're gonna be correct.
Let me make a recommendation that we might want to consider, hiring a consultant professionally to go in and correct this for two reasons. One, bank reconciliations have been, and that's not rocket science, and that's been
Yeah,
in
you gotta do
this
that.
for the last 2 or 3 audits, okay? At least the last 2 audits. Secondly, I noticed, I went and talked to Tim today, in the fiduciary funds, for you guys to understand what they are, the agency funds, and as a banker, probably you understand this, they should not have net financial positions. Everything an agency fund has is owed to somebody. And if you go back to several audits, you'll see there was no net position. In other words, I took in $4 million, I paid this much out to the school, this out to the county, this out to sheriff retirement fund, whatever, and there's no net fund balance. What I noticed as I looked over this audit, it concerns not only are we not reconciling the accounts, and I'm not picking on one, but I just take the clerk of the courts, it's concerning to me that I see $1,146,000 in a net position, which means that's the difference that I haven't assigned to anybody. That should never be on there. I'm surprised the auditors, and Mark, I want you to address this with the auditors. There should be no net position on a fiduciary account.
So what you're saying is the net position should go into a fund balance or somewhere.
It shouldn't go into a fund balance.
Shouldn't be sitting there,
If I
money sitting
collect,
there.
if I collect $1,000 in fines, it's for this sheriff retirement fund, the county for this
Got an
whatever.
allocation.
And it zeroes out. And at the end of the month, you write those checks and we get our money.
Right.
These fiduciary funds right now have $2 million sitting in there in unidentified positions.
Wow.
If 60% of that, which I would guess would be our money, our auditors have materially underreported our revenues, because that should be, in my opinion, a finding, and it should be corrected, and they should define what that money is and who it belongs to.
Yeah, it's substantial.
Yeah, it should be under the balance sheet item. So I just want to highlight that with you, Mark, if you would. The
Right.
auditors want to talk to me about it. These fiduciary funds should not have any net positions, and the 2 larger ones are the ones that are having findings on. It's the tax commissioner and the clerk of courts, but you've also got it in probate court. So,
Well, on the clerk of court, I mean, it says word for word in the audit that it doesn't look like the employees are trained properly on the software. So that seems like that should be an easy fix that's just being overlooked.
yeah, and I think we may have to get involved since it's on our audit. It affects our bond standard. So we may need to go hire a consultant that goes in, identifies why they can't do the reconciliation and why we can't get the funds distributed by the end of the month, and clarify that it can't be that hard
Yeah, it can be
of a
cleaned up
fix
pretty
if we
easily.
get somebody that knows what they're doing to do it. And it could be our auditors. They may be the ones that can go in there. I'm not sure they can do that. I think that is a conflict of interest there,
conflict. Yeah,
under
yeah.
the new audit rules several years ago.
They've done some training with them, I believe, but yeah, I see what
Yeah,
you're saying.
so that was concerning to me. I want to lift that up because I think there should be a finding. Because there is actually a state statute where, once again, I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but just want to make sure our elected officials know, when you receive funds and you don't pay them over to the county and you hold those for a certain period of time, I believe there was somebody who filed suit against somebody not too long ago, that y'all remember, because they were saying the constitutional officer was holding funds. So I'm not sure that shouldn't be a finding there. I think you need to lift that up to them. Let's get all that corrected. To your point, let's get some consulting in there. I know it's not intentional.
Yeah.
Probably just don't understand, but we need to get it resolved. And it's growing. It's grown from nothing to $2 million in the last 3 years.
And that's what's really so concerning, not only the amount of money, but the length of time. And to go
Yeah.
back in the records and figure all that out from years prior, that's a big job. It's forensic accounting, pretty much.
Yeah, shouldn't be that difficult. I did it for years as an auditor, so I know what it takes. So they should be able to do it.
Can we hire you?
No, a couple of things just to make the board aware. On the water and sewer revenues, I wanted you to notice we do have a loss of about $500,000. And I was talking to Tim today about making sure that we get all our administrative costs, because we're fixing to do a rate analysis, but we're still losing from operational standpoint about $500,000. We even talked about looking at our planning and strategic monies. Do we put that in some kind of research and development that's amortized, get that cost, so that when we get our new rates, we do cover our costs, because we need our water and sewer to be paid for by user
At
charges.
least balanced.
And I know y'all are on top of that. Just make sure the board's aware of that we are, even though it's better, we're still losing about $500,000 a year when you get the interest on that money. And we want to resolve that and get all the administrative costs, because it's not all there right now. So we need to look at that, and I can give you some ideas on how that can be done in a structured basis. That fiduciary funds, the findings, I think that's all. Everything else I can cover with staff on the side. Yeah, that's good. Some other things I want to cover with you, but that, we can do that later. Appreciate your work on the finances, but it's a lot, isn't it?
It is, yes,
My
sir.
goodness. I bet your head just spins with numbers at night.
It does.
See, I love numbers. They talk to me. All right. Any comments or questions about the audit?
No.
We need to accept this audit so we can get it into the state.
Make a motion to approve alternative one.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kiefer, second by Mr. Deloach to approve alternative one. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no no's, it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
That would take care of item 2 for that, I guess?
Yes, item 2, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yep. And so item 3, consideration to approve to amend the administrative service agreement with Maritime Health Incorporated. Now, we're not fixing to renew this for a whole nother year, are we?
No.
Because they're costing me money right now.
Well, you can send that issue to me so I can try and help you.
I told Tim I was gonna come see you on
He
it.
has
Yeah.
been very helpful.
I try and help everybody, so.
Well,
Early liaison.
I already did some of my own helping. I called and got some prices from some other places, and they told me what the problem was, and then I got our local hospital to match their prices, so, but we shouldn't have to do that. If I'd have just paid the bill, it'd cost me another $2,000 more than it should have.
Well, we recently had a conversation with Maritime, and that is a common theme, that we're having some billing issues with Effingham Health. So they work with Maritime also, and we're trying to kind of internally get them to work that out with their billing department.
Well, sometime this week, I would like to sit down and give you some real tangible examples.
Yes.
And I'd like to know how this is impacting our employees, and if they can't step up, do we need another administrator before we sign a contract? So are we fixing to approve a contract with this?
So this was for 2024, effective January 1st. Yes, sir. So we're with them through the next year.
Well, but effective, wait a
Oh,
minute.
I'm not 2020. Yeah, this is from the 1st, January 1st.
We've been
This
using
year,
them, we're just
yeah.
Yes,
backdating this
sorry.
contract?
This year, an amendment.
An amendment to the ASA.
Oh, we've already approved the contract, we're just amending it here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So,
But for January 25, we're gonna look at
We are.
some
You are.
options. I'm
We
with
are.
you.
And we've
I'm
already
with you.
gotten with our broker, so they're preparing that for us.
I'll show you my
Okay.
concerns, and
Sure.
you can address those as you look for new brokers. This is just an amendment. Any questions, discussion from the board, or motion to approve alternative one?
Make a motion to approve alternative 1.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Burdette, second by Mr. Deloach to approve alternative one. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no no's, it passes unanimously. You can tell I'm taking that one personal when it hits my checkbook. Item number 4, staff recommends approval of an application by Alec Metzger for a sketch plan located at Noel C. Conway Road for Buckingham Plantation, Phase 3, Zones R6, map number 375, parcel number 50 in the 2nd District.
Yes, sir. Samantha Easton, Planner 2. This has already been approved back in 2021. However, the notice to proceed did expire after a year, so this is just a formality to come back through. The only change that has been made is that they took out a stub out. That was required by previous staff. They do not have any intentions on expanding to that parcel that the stub out was to. So
Okay.
staff is recommending alternative 1.
Any questions or Discussion or a motion for alternative one?
I remember approving this the first time.
That's right.
I said I remember approving this
Yeah.
the first time.
Does that make
You
a
go-
motion to approve alternative one?
Motion by Mr. Burdette,
Second.
second Mr. Deloach. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, alternative one is approved unanimously. Thank you. Item number 5, consideration to approve resolution 24-15 for surplus of various items.
Yes, sir. Allison Bruton, Procurement and Capital Projects Manager. So we do just have some vehicles listed that are going to be replaced. So staff recommends alternative one.
Any discussion or motion for alternative one?
Make a motion to approve alternative one.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Deloach, second Mr. Burdette for alternative one. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, it passes unanimously. Item number 6, consideration to approve a proposal for Vertiv Services for UPS maintenance agreement.
Yes, sir. So this is an annual renewal, but because there is a price change from last year, it's issued as a new proposal. And this is for the UPS maintenance, which is found at the MAC Center, 3 county radio tower sites, and at 601 North Laurel Street. Staff recommends alternative one.
Okay, any question, discussion, or motion for alternative one?
Make a motion to approve alternative one.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Kiefer, second Mr. Deloach for alternative one. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, it passes unanimously. Item number 7, consideration to approve an intergovernmental contract with Savannah Economic Development Authority for Effingham County participation in a housing need assessment.
Yes, sir. So the IGA participants in this include Savannah Economic Development Authority, Bryan County, Bullitt County, Chatham County, Effingham, City of Savannah, Georgia Department of Community Affairs, and the One Georgia Authority. And this is, the agreement is with the Georgia Tech Research Corporation to conduct a coastal housing study in the southeast portion of the state for the purposes of conducting a comprehensive analysis of the housing market and to provide a housing market needs assessment and planning services for the 4-county area. Effingham's contribution towards this would be $20,000, and staff recommends alternative one.
And I think this helps us with grants too, by participation in this, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, so it's important for a lot of reasons.
And some of the legislation that's going through the state right now actually gives you a leg up if you have accomplished a housing study.
Very good. Any discussion or motion for alternative
Make
one?
a motion to approve alternative one.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Deloach, second Mr. Burdette for alternative one. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, it passes unanimously. Item number 8, consideration to approve contract 23 ITB-51 with McClendon Enterprises for the Hodgeville resurfacing project.
Yes, sir. So this project does include the resurfacing of Hodgeville Road in addition to intersection improvements at Hodgeville and Forest Haven and Hodgeville and Scuffletown. We did receive 3 proposals, and that breakdown is on your staff report. The submittals were reviewed by staff, Robert Civil Engineering, who serves as the engineer on the project, and Thomas and Hutton in a program management capacity. And staff recommends alternative one, which is award to McClendon.
Very good experiences with McClendon.
Yes, we have. We have.
Can I do a little dance for this one?
Yeah. Somebody
Just a
make
quick
it a formal
question,
motion. Oh,
coordination of time, Hodgeville versus roundabouts.
Yeah, so what we did on this, and you know, our goal is to try and get those roundabouts out for bid over the summer. But what we did on this particular project is we just basically stopped right before Collicomi and right before Goshen. And so we're going to leave the repaving in between those 2 intersections as part of the roundabout.
So we'll save that
Contract.
little bit of money in those areas until we get the roundabouts in.
That's right.
Okay, good.
Figure why repave it if you're just going to rip
Exactly,
it up
we're
when you
gonna
put the
rip it
roundabout up.
Just be prepared to explain that.
Right. That in mind, make a motion for alternative one.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Burdette, second Mr. Floyd for alternative one. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, it passes unanimously. Item number 9, consideration to approve a field practicum agreement with the National Medical Education and Training Center to allow students to obtain clinical hours through EMS.
Yes, sir. So this is a request from Ms. Wanda McDuffie for EMS for one of these students to train with her staff. We've approved agreements like this in the past. I did also forward a copy to ACCG for review and the certificate of insurance that they provided. So staff recommends alternative one.
Motion for alternative one.
Make a motion to approve alternative one.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Burdette, second, Mr. Deloach. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
We moved item number 10, so item number 11, consideration to approve to amend the purchase and sale contract with Larry B. Saxon Jr. to reduce the sale price for a parcel identified on map number 301, parcel number 32 in the first district.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is an additional 4-acre property that we're purchasing adjacent to the Atlas Reservoir.
Right.
As a result of some of the due diligence process and the appraisal, we've negotiated the price down from $350 to $312,500. Staff is recommending alternative one.
Any question, discussion, or motion for alternative one?
Make a motion to approve alternative one.
Second.
Motion, Mr. Floyd, second, Mr. Deloach for alternative one. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, it passes unanimously. All right, that concludes our business other than administrative reports. Do we have any administrative reports tonight?
Yes, I was going to give a quick update on the
Tim, since you and I talked about some of this, I need to have a break. I'm going to step out. Y'all can continue on. I don't have a vote anyway. It's not voting. I'll be right back. Go ahead.
Okay. I did want to give an update on the town halls. Our next one up is on April 11th, which is District 2, which will be at South Effingham High School. And I believe we're trying to finalize locations for the remainder. I know we've worked something out for District 3 on location. We're just solidifying the date. And
April 23rd.
April 23rd, right. And that's at Effingham High School.
Yes.
And then I think that just leaves Districts 4 and 5, and we will work on those dates.
How were you advertising this, Tim?
Putting in the newspaper, and we are also broadcasting it online.
Is anybody reaching out to HOAs or anything, or I can do that as well?
We can do that, and we're somewhat limited on our database to reach out to, but certainly for the ones we have, we can let folks know.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
A comment on the town hall, I thought it went well. The acoustics at Marlowe Gym, they were terrible.
Yeah.
It echoed through there, so hopefully you guys have an auditorium to speak. But a lot of positive, the Atlas site's getting a lot of attention, a lot of positive reviews for sure.
I've heard a lot of people, like on the street, talking about, they heard about the drone video footage.
Yeah.
They've been talking about it.
Yeah, I shared it today, and my people I have no idea were reaching out to me saying, when do we get that? And I'm thinking, we've had this 18 years or more, I believe, trying to get it moving forward.
And we actually, we had a meeting on that today. There's some remediation that we have to do on the site. And I believe we're going to be getting an update at the next meeting about when we could, move forward with, it's already under design, but to, move forward with full design to construction.
I've had some people ask questions. They're not going to be like motorized boats. It'll be just maybe a trolling motor.
Electric.
Yeah, that's the route we were looking at. That if we allow, because it is a big lake, so if we allow motors, it'll be electric only, but mostly paddle boat.
What if we get an electric jet ski out there? Is that?
We'll probably
I think they
You
make
know,
it.
I'm
I
not
wouldn't-
sure-
future.
I'm not, that may be what you want to go,
I'll-
but I'm not sure I'm on that page. I'd like to be researched, because there's kind of two areas. You could have one that was for the beach and it's calm and it's electric motors or whatever, trolling motors, but it is a big lake. And I don't know how many places people have got to enjoy water sports. So there may be a safe way to have an area that could do some water sports. I don't know. I just hate to.
There's some shallow spots out there. It'd be, you don't need any bass boats out there racing around.
Well,
I would
maybe
think-
not that, but I mean, I'm saying,
But now they have
a
so
John
many,
boat, for example,
so
with
many
a
EV
25 horsepower
toys,
motor,
you
because it's a
know.
pretty big lake instead of just a little trolling motor. I don't know.
We got to be careful what we call or we allow there, just to be on the safe
only
side.
bad-
I don't
anyway,
disagree. I just don't want to say, hey,
Yeah, yeah.
no
We can start with electric, I think. I believe there's gonna be a huge response. I believe as soon as we open it, we're gonna have
See
people
Clint
out
over
there.
there getting tensed up, talking about those, big bass boats over there.
I heard one constituent mention that they had originally planned an amphitheater out there. That's way before my time on the board, but
That, interesting that you mention, it's in the most recent that we went over today, that was one of the inclusions that I've asked for. And so it's in there. It's actually, I mean, it looks right down on the water,
Really?
right down up here. It's pretty,
You have
it's pretty
concerts
nice.
and,
man,
Yeah.
it'd be phenomenal. It'd be great. Be a great win for us.
Yeah, it'll be a premier recreation area, I believe.
It's good.
looking forward to seeing the concepts. Are we still on your report, or did y'all move?
No,
on?
I'm done.
We do need to rename that thing at some
Yes, we
point.
do.
Yeah,
Instead
we
of
do.
calling it Atlas.
No, I agree.
Let the citizens
Unless you have this
give
big
us some
muscle
key
guy and you're
input.
walking in.
Maybe if somebody at the
Stephanie wants
state,
a
they might wanna give
policy.
us some money.
I can see her over there.
Yep, I got it. I'll bring it next meeting.
Sounds good. Had you already started around to see what other, okay,
I just spoke about the town hall. That's, I've been sending a lot of stuff to code enforcement. I see Greg's already left, but,
Oh, he's hiding from you.
there you are, yeah. District One's keeping me all busy over there. Anyway, appreciate the support. That's all I got.
very good. And did you already make your,
I don't have anything.
okay. And we do have did you mention that dinner already for the next,
No,
26th?
Finish with them, let me speak with Lee for a quick second.
Okay, if you're going to be great. All right.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised at Forest Town Hall. Nobody yelled or, everybody listened to the facts and let Tim and Forrest speak, and I thought it was really good. So, but I don't have anything. That was it.
I don't have anything.
Okay. You confirm with our attorney? We can come back, we have a need for a brief executive session. So Stephanie, we can come back and address that just before we adjourn.
Okay.
About that meeting's going forward.
You wanna do that?
Hmm?
You want a motion to go in?
Yeah, motion to go into executive session.
Make a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel, property, and pending litigation.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kiefer, second Mr. Deloach, to go into executive session. All in favor say aye. Any opposed, no. Hearing no nos, we are going to go into executive session. We don't have any other business for those who are here tonight, so everyone's can be dismissed. We're just going to come back and find out if we can have this dinner meeting next week.